You're listening to CX Passport, the show about creating great customer experiences with a dash of travel talk. Each episode, we'll talk with our guest about great CX, travel, and just like the best journeys, explore new directions we never anticipated. I'm your host, Rick Denton. I believe the best meals are served outside and require a passport. Let's get going. Show of hands for everyone who opted to start a completely new brand concept in the middle of a pandemic. No? Well, today we get to hear from Brian Campbell and Mike Dzura, two people who did just that. Brian is the VP of Culinary and Beverage, and Mike is the Director of Marketing at a new concept launched this year, BigShots Golf. I'm eager to learn how they went about creating a customer-centric experience in the midst of all that 2020 brought us. Now, Brian and I have known each other for years, and I can assure you that while I may talk about passports and great meals, some of the best things I've eaten have come from his chef creations. While my stomach rumbles thinking about it, let's get to hearing more from Brian and Mike. Gents, welcome to CX Passport.
Good morning. Thank you.
Thanks for having us, Rick.
Glad to hear from y'all. I'm looking forward to this. So both of y'all were involved in the launch of a new brand, which has to be incredibly exciting. Now, as you'd expect with a name like CX Passport, we're going to head right to talking about the customer. So with so many possible points of inspiration, how does the customer fit into how you create the overall brand and experience?
Yeah, Rick, that's a great question. And as you kind of alluded to in the front, creating a brand in 2020 is a challenge. It's a challenge in any year. Last year, brought a lot of things upon us. And when we sit back and kind of look at the customer, the customer is always at the center, no matter what we're doing. Every decision that we're making, we're putting the customer at the center. And we really had to focus on this past year, what does that customer want? And what does that guest want? What are they looking for when we say the word experience at the end of the day? And how are we continuing to innovate on that experience? This last year forced us to sit back and really kind of ask those questions because the pandemic had many effects across every type of business. But the one thing it really forced every brand, if you look around, to do was to adopt more technology at the end of the day. Mm-hmm. And that led people to, this kind of goes to my parents a little bit too. If they do listen to this, I'm sorry, mom and dad, but they had never used apps like Uber Eats or DoorDash. Now they have used smartphones, but our grandparents never used smartphones in the way that they had to use them when you couldn't, interact with them face to face, but you wanted to see them. Well, while that was a shift in how people, use technology, it also opened the door to now make it more acceptable to everybody using it in everyday life. And so when you look at restaurants, it really kind of changed the game and how they were operating, right? Restaurants had to think very quickly on their feet. How am I going to continue my business during the midst of this, during shutdowns that nobody can get out of? But I got to keep putting food on the table for my family. Mm-hmm. It really kind of changed the game, and it's kind of where this is going. We see this going beyond just the pandemic now, that people are seeing this. We see the younger generations rising. They already use this stuff. Now everybody else is getting on board with them. It's kind of like flip-flop from what you see in the past. So, at the end of the day, we were fortunate that our brand is just beginning. Our first corporate store, as we've talked, opens at the end of the year in Bryan, Texas. It's allowing us to build a tech stack that really complements that guest experience. And at the end of the day, what we're really focusing on with our technology team is walking that very fine line of, what's the right tech stack while keeping that human interaction experience that we want to have, when we do open our BigShots Golf.
So that's going to be important, and I want to ask you about that later, the human aspect of that. But staying with that technology theme right now, it makes a lot of sense to me that it's been sort of a benefit for y'all to have not had something pre-pandemic, that you got to create that during it, so that it wasn't that you were trying to convert through, but rather develop inside of that pandemic and be able to start afresh. Because we've seen a lot of brands out there having to revamp how they did things, and that can be a bit of a mental shift for them, when for you it was just, here's how we're going to start.
I agree. Last year there were a lot of questions about, what will things be like next year or the year after that when we emerge from this pandemic, and how do we start off with that mindset rather than having to pivot? So definitely conversations we had.
Well, and one of the things that allows you to start when you're starting from scratch is almost everything's unexpected. And so I remember when we were talking earlier, there was a phrase that y'all said called unexpected experiences for people. What do you mean by that?
Well, I think our unexpected experiences, it is kind of one of our rallying cries. And I'll back up just a little bit. I think one thing that Mike and his team did last year to really set us up for success was to define our brand, define our, brand archetype, a manifesto and core values that we operate from. And one that really rises to the top for us is unexpected. Okay. So that can be unexpected food quality, an unexpected moment. How do we celebrate you coming in? So as Mike alluded to technology, how can we use technology to know what does Rick Denton like when he comes into BigShots Golf? And so even if you go to a different location, they know what your favorite drink is. They know what you usually order. They know what game you like to play. And so are there ways that we can start, delivering on that, so that when you walk into Bryan, Texas, you've never been there before, they know what you like already?
Isn't that almost the nirvana that we want as customers when we talk about that? It's so unexpected. I get that, the delight, the surprise and delight that, oh my gosh, I've walked in somewhere new. We talk about that shooting call centers, right? Why am I having to give you this information again? And so it goes back to what y'all have described as that tech stack, being able to, from the very beginning, have this universal picture of what the customer looks like inside of your technology. But that also must translate into a universal, unexpected experience across the stores. Now, you have mentioned there's one store opening, and it's kind of the beginning of y'all's journey. But how are you going about ensuring that there's that sort of standardization of that customer experience across all of your stores?
Yeah, I mean, so what I'll kind of add on to what Brian was saying, and I know we're going to get into Brian's food and stuff, and, and what he did during the pandemic was incredible. But when you think of the word or the name BigShots Golf, right? You immediately think, oh, it's another golf driving range with some technology behind it. But what people don't realize is the innovation behind the kitchen that Brian has built here in the past year, and that our brand, when we look at it, is actually a food first concept with experiential golf as the primary entertainment driver. And the reason for that is, we sit here collectively and believe that golf is the greatest game that you can play. It teaches us so much about life beyond just the sport of golf. If you've ever played golf and you're listening to this, you know what I'm talking about. Well, you can have your lowest score one day, and then it humbles you very quickly after that.
Deeply. I certainly have learned how to express my curse words in the most effective way using the game of golf. So yes, it teaches you a lot of lessons.
There you go. But the reality is that it is hard. It's expensive. It has a terrible reputation for not being diverse. And that's something that we want to change. We believe golf is for everyone. We believe that everyone, whether you're, a scratch golfer or have never swung a club, we can always say, one of the things that we always say is that BigShots Golf is a feeling. Big Shot is a feeling. Anybody can be a big shot when you come to BigShots. It's not about, I had the highest score in this game. It's about connecting with your friends, your families, your colleagues, building memories you want to hurry back to. And everyone walking into BigShot should feel just like that at the end of the day, a big shot. I was actually having this conversation with a brand agency that we're looking to work with around influencer marketing. It's so powerful, but there's this shift that we think that's happening. And it's that shift where you take, hey, the brands that were using big celebrities as their influencers, that's kind of shifting to now you're kind of going to more of this micro world where people want to see in brands everyday people like you and me interacting. That's what it's about at the end of the day. That's something that everybody can strive to be. And at the end of the day, it's not about being XYZ celebrity. It's about living as a big shot in your own way. And when we talk about unexpected experiences, it's exactly that. It ranges from the food, how our staff is interacting with you, obviously our gaming, but also what we're bringing outside of the bay. We really believe that, bringing the fun outside of the bay and T-Box line is where, people will continue to come back to us as well. Just the other week, we hosted a boot camp on the lawn at our Fort Worth location, which is one of our franchise ones. And how it worked was 7 a.m. They did an hour-long boot camp. We had about 190 people show up, and we have a massive driving range lawn that they could work out on. Well, afterwards, we set up brunch and golf from 8 to 9 before the store even opened. And so again, that's a way for people to come in. They were able to sweat, they were able to swing, they were able to eat, all on their Saturday morning and kind of kick off their weekend. And to us, that's kind of what unexpected means, and that's what we're really trying to build off. So when we look at it across all of our stores that are coming, it's really having that thread that when you go to a BigShots Golf, it's more than just the golf. You're there for an experience that can really relate to anybody at that point.
There's a couple things in there that you said that I really appreciate, and that is one of the things of how you're looking to create a brand that embraces the diversity of your customer base. And I've talked about that a lot in different podcasts, different themes, but it's always been about how do we reflect that. We're seeing some great retail brands go at that, right? And so Dove is the one that I think caught the first and the most attention around how, hey, we're going to recognize that there are all body shapes and body sizes, and they all need Dove products, and how can we represent that? And so that diversity of what that looks like, and then other brands recognizing, hey, there's a lot of experiences that come to play, and if we don't recognize those experiences, and those are customers that aren't interested in our brand. And then the other thing that well, there's a lot that you said in there that I love, but something that definitely caught my ear was the idea of the boot camp, because I have had Brian's meals, and I know that I need to work out in order to be able to well, we talk about body shapes and sizes. Mine would certainly continue to change if I didn't work out, given how wonderful Brian's foods are. So, Brian, I kind of want to pivot that back to you. So, this may be more for you, but listeners of the podcast know that my tagline is that I believe the best meals are served outside and require a passport. Now, you had the opportunity to create an entirely new menu experience. How did your travels inspire that menu development?
It's funny because I've been thinking about that. And, obviously, as chefs, you need to get out, you need to see food. And so I would say our menu is probably less influenced by passport travel and more in the US, but, just getting out and just hitting different cities, I mean, and I'll speak to my past life too. I mean, there've been times when you go to New York City and you try a dish and you go, oh my gosh, I want to put that onto the menu. So, we went out and we were thinking about something like our burger, right? So we wanted a smash burger. So it's 2 smash patties. It's the Martin's potato bun. It's kind of like, hey, you know what? We love Shake Shack. How can we, kind of take that and bring it into our experience, that kind of awesome burger. So, our pizza was very loosely influenced by the idea of a Roman style pizza. Okay. So having been in Rome a few years ago, it's this really light, crisp, airy pizza. We can't do the experience like they do it there, but we took that idea. And this is, one of the stories people love to tell is that this pizza was actually developed in my kitchen last year during the pandemic. And as you know, I have 2 teenage age daughters.
Yes.
And when they say, Dad, we're sick of pizza, you're cooking a little too much pizza at home. But, back to the unexpected in our food. So like our pizza, we're making the dough in house every day. We're making the sauce in house. We're using fresh mozzarella. So this is not a frozen dough and a canned sauce and pre-shredded cheese. Like we are really trying to put a stake in the ground for quality. And, the other thing I was reflecting on when I was thinking about this question of travel is, about 20 years ago, I had the opportunity to go to Paris for a week just to eat. Somebody paid, my boss at the time paid for me and Debbie to go over there and eat. And I walked away. I wasn't blown away like, oh my gosh, the technique, this, but it was just the quality that speaks through and everything that we had, just fresh ingredients, prepared correctly. And, it's those truths in cooking that you just bring to even something like bar food. Like, how do you make the best wing? How do you make the best pizza? How do you make the best burger? Things like our onion rings. How do you bread those right? And so I think just getting out and experiencing food, whether it's in town, whether it's on the other side of the world, you bring it into everything you do.
Oh, Brian, when you end on telling me about being paid to eat through Paris, you have now just made every listener jealous and going back and reconsidering all their life decisions as to why they aren't in a job where someone is paying them to eat in Paris. But hey, with those travels, sometimes it's important to hit the lounge and get a little rest and relaxation. So I'd ask you both to come join me here in the First Class Lounge. We'll move quickly here and hopefully have a little bit of fun too. So any order, but dream travel location from your past.
for me, it was actually me and my wife and I's honeymoon. We went to Kauai, Princeville. And I mean, if you've been to Hawaii and you've been to somewhere like Oahu or Maui, or really any of the islands outside of Kauai, whenever anybody goes to Hawaii, I feel like they think, oh, it's like Jurassic Park. But then you get to Maui and it's like, Maui's beautiful and I love Maui. But when you get to Kauai, there's something different about it being remote. You can only access half the island. And it's the first time, I would say in my career, that I was able to actually truly disconnect from everything from the outside. Now, some of that might have been from my wife forcing me to do that because it was our honeymoon. But you're also just in these remote areas all day exploring, kind of what the nature and the landscape of Hawaii is and truly is. And it's something that we always talk about going back to, when we were leaving our honeymoon, my wife was like, I want to live here. And I remember looking at her and being like, okay, well, we would be living on this beach over here. And that was fine for her. And that's when I realized that, hey, I know I married the right girl because she's okay with that stuff. And that's how I live too. So for me, that awesome. Was my, ultimate location I'd been to up to this point.
Awesome. Brian, how about you?
Well, I do agree. Kauai has been a highlight of my travels. I've been able to go there a couple times, but the one that really comes back to me that blew me away that I wasn't really expecting, and I mentioned Rome a few minutes ago. So I had an opportunity about 4 years ago. We only got to spend a day or two in Rome. It wasn't quite long enough, but we were just blown away at, the culture, the history, the food, that you can just walk down the street and go, oh my gosh, that building's 1,500 years old. Just the amazing vibe, I guess, for lack of a better word, but really, not that I spent enough time there, but it just wet the whistle that I want to get back there and spend more time.
Nice. Well, so Brian, let's go with you next. The dream travel location you've not been to yet.
So we were actually touching on a few of these earlier, right? So, I've been to 4 of the continents. Africa is definitely a place I want to get to. I've wanted to get there since really I was in college, and I had some professors that talked about doing field work in the Ngorongoro Gorge with all the animals, and just getting there and seeing that is a place I really have on my bucket list.
Nice. I like that a lot. Mike, how about you?
That's a hard one, I think I'd probably say Ireland. Half of my ancestors are from Ireland. I've had family go back and visit. Actually, a really cool story a couple of years ago, aunt, uncle, and cousins of mine went up there, and they actually met with family of my grandfather who passed away back in 1999, and met his relatives, and really cool experience. And I'm a massive golfer, so I've always wanted to play golf over in that area of the world. Scotland's another one I throw up because I like I like Scotch as well. And so I've always wanted to see that.
Oh, that sounds really nice. Now, you mentioned Scotch, but I'm only going to focus on food right here. So what is your favorite thing to eat, Mike?
At the end of the day, if you throw a ribeye in front of me, I'm going to eat it, and it's my favorite thing in the world. I need to probably watch how much red meat I eat, but, I love a medium rare ribeye, especially cut down here in Texas. So.
Yeah, well, we're a consequence-free zone here, so you eat as much red meat as you want inside the podcast. Brian, I bet for the chef this may be a hard one, but what is your favorite thing?
This is a very hard question because it will change, but I have to say I probably go back to Italian food more than anything else. And it just, especially, things like just baked pastas with lots of cheese, like that to me is comfort food that I could eat all the time. But again, probably don't need to eat that every day.
Remember, consequence-free zone. We're okay here. Yes. Don't worry about it. Now think about the other way, Brian. What is a thing your parents forced you to eat but you hated as a kid?
I don't remember them forcing me to eat anything, but I do know that, and apologies to Mom, she would make the stuffed green bell peppers, and that green bell pepper that had been cooked in the oven for an hour, like I could not eat it. Now the filling, the meat, the rice, whatever, I love that. But, it took me years. I was probably not into my 20s till I discovered that, oh my gosh, bell peppers are actually really good when you don't cook them for an hour.
It's amazing what we learn and what we've been tortured with some of those cooking things from the past. So how about you, Mike? What's a thing your parents forced you to eat but you hated as a kid?
Yeah, it's funny because it's one of my favorite things to eat now, but it's broccoli. I used to be like, and I think it was because like your friends didn't really eat broccoli, or at least like you didn't see them eat broccoli. And
Yeah.
so whenever my mom would make us eat it at night, she was big on having a vegetable every dinner. We'd always have a sit down family dinner. We didn't drink water. We drank a glass of milk, which, I have to thank her for now because I'd never broken a bone and it probably had a lot to play into it. But yeah, broccoli was probably the big one when I was a kid. But again, I love it now. I eat it almost every night. So.
Brilliant. Love it. It's funny. Broccoli and Brussels sprouts have shown up quite a bit on the flip, like that they hated as a kid and then flipped as an adult.
Yep.
I always liked broccoli. I always hated Brussels sprouts. So it doesn't apply to me, but my goodness, I've heard a lot of guests say the flip
It's
there.
the green vegetables, the green bell peppers, the broccoli, the Brussels. Yeah.
Yeah, veggies have come up a lot as the category there. So let's start with Mike. We'll close with Brian. What is one travel item you will not leave without, Mike?
This is funny, or I think it's funny, but it's actually my AirPods. And it's funny how Apple does this to you. And that's why I think they're one of the greatest brands. But, when you leave your home without your phone, right? You feel like you're disconnected from the world. What are you going to do? Well, I do that with my AirPods now too. So like if I leave, even if I'm going to the office without them, I start stressing. I'm like, how am I going to take this conference call? What am I going to do? I have to hold the phone to my ear actually. So it's one of the things that like, I always double check. I keep them in my pocket no matter where I go. I could just be going to the store and I got them with me. So that's my one thing that I now never leave without.
Awesome. Brian?
Well, it's funny because I was thinking technology too. I mean, I don't think this is not even a travel item. I can't go anywhere without my phone these days. Like if I run an errand and I don't have my phone, like you said, I feel lost. And, I remember the days of when I had to travel, you either had the big flip map or you were printing out the not even Google Map. I don't remember what was before that. MapQuest. You were printing out your MapQuest to figure out where you were going. And these days, without your phone, I mean, everything is on that. So got to have it.
So yes, Brian, the phone definitely. I have no idea how we traveled without. Well, actually, I do. We found a folded map in my wife's car because we just traded it in, and my kids didn't go as far as to say, "What's that?" But I guarantee they'd have zero idea how to use that map. So it was funny to think how far we've come there. So I know this, though, thinking of maps, travel isn't always major international flights and long travel. It can be in our own backyard or regionally close. So how do entertainment venues like BigShots appeal to that type of traveler?
Yeah, I think it's interesting because I think the pandemic influenced this a lot. People used to take for granted like the littlest things. I remember here in Dallas, when we were going through our first kind of wave of lockdowns, going on a walk was like a privilege. Mm-hmm. You were excited to do that, and before the pandemic, you just took that for granted, and all of a sudden you see all the neighborhood out walking around the same times, and I think when we talk about big shots and entertainment venues that are similar to it. What we are really trying to create in our realm is, a feeling of a neighborhood and a community, something that you can come back to. It doesn't mean that, a lot of times people, in my experience, look forward to that big vacation every year and they're working towards it. And I think that's great. You got to have those goals. But if something happens and you can't take that vacation or you can't do that, it doesn't mean all is lost. Like you can still have experiences that you can look forward to every single day and every single week. And that's what we're trying to create for Big Shots here is, in your own backyard, there's things to explore that people from the other side of the world, I use Dallas, for example. People are always like, why would you come to Dallas? Well, I'm like, people from the other side of the world, like they come over here or, different parts of the country and they think Texas is great. And so I think it's, it's all about where you're from and what your kind of backgrounds are. But I think, being able to create those community and neighborhood vibes that really bring people together, give people that excitement that they have something to look forward to, not just, once a year, but every day to every week to every month.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I found myself enjoying those walks as well. And it is, you're right, Mike, those little things. I'm curious about a quote that I've heard y'all say to me as we were kind of getting connected and planning this out. You said to me earlier, and forgive me, I failed to remember whether it was you, Mike, or you, Brian, but I'd love both of your perspectives on this, and we may close out with this. But you said, we know we've made mistakes. We just don't know what they are yet. Tell me more what you mean by that.
Yeah, so I said that when we were talking before, because as we were developing this brand, there were so many decisions to make. And I always contrast it with, and I've worked with other companies, you walk in and you pretty much have everything figured out. We're just tweaking and revising. But in this one, there were times I'd wake up in the middle of the night and think, oh my gosh, we need to pick a coffee cup, So there were so many decisions from what Mike's team did with the branding, uniforms, what's our guest experience, what's our food and beverage, that we know we're going to get something wrong. It's almost that, fail fast kind of thing. Like, let's figure out what's wrong and fix it. Because we know there's something, either the food's not going to work, a prep's going to be too hard. We're going to have something to find wrong in our guest experience. And I think earlier when we were talking, Mike talked about technology. And I think that's one thing that we're really going to probably start leaning in on more. Not that we've made a mistake, but you just realize, hey, we can use technology at the Bay to get people's food out faster, to help people order faster. And so we're just really researching things like that. So I think it's still, we're in that world of figuring out what our mistakes are. And we'll learn more as we keep going.
I think something you said there, Brian, had to have been a challenge specifically during the pandemic, because it's one thing to know, hey, we made mistakes, and then you run them through customers, but you probably weren't interacting with customers much during that time because we were all in lockdown. So I may direct this to you, Mike. How, taking what Brian was saying there about, we know we've made mistakes, we just don't know what they are yet, how are you incorporating the customer's voice both during the pandemic and now to find out what are the things that delight the customer, what are the things that are falling short, and then iterate and change going forward?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think that the first thing on this entire question, I think it's a great question, is any brand that feels like they have it figured out, to me, they made their first mistake there, right? and so to us, it's all about, you have to be able to evolve. I mean, everything that came through last year, and we talk about 2022 is going to be in the past, right? And we're going to be moving forward, but it's going to be a new normal. And it's really, really looking at what does our guest want? And, as we were building this brand last year, we didn't have any locations. That's a lot of the brand team working on this, is who we believe our guest is going to be. Well, one of the sayings that we have on our team is no plan's bulletproof on especially on the marketing side, right? Yeah. Like you can go in with that, but it's going to change very quickly once we start learning who our customer really is and what they want. And a lot of that has to do with hearing from our customers. And so we want to engage, and we're working with a group right now on putting in, real-time guest survey questions in venue to understand, like, where are the shortcomings, where we might see from a 30,000 foot view, this looks like it makes a lot of sense on paper. The customer at the end of the day might not think that, the guest might not think that. And then when you look at the markets that we're going to, is we're really going to these second and third tier markets that don't have an entertainment experience that we're bringing. Well, what that challenge brings is, it's not like going to a big market where you have a diverse set of people there that you can kind of reach, and every kind of market kind of has that group of people. We're going to very niche areas that we need to focus on. Hey, Bryan, Texas is going to look a lot different than maybe what St. George, Utah looks like, okay, or what Naples, Florida looks like. And so it's also really adapting around those individual locations and making sure that we're hitting the experience right for them as well. And again, it's about, to me, at the end of the day, it's about not being coming in with some kind of bulletproof plan. It's being ready to evolve as soon as we open, because we know we're going to have to.
I think let's close there, because that you've hit on a theme that is very dear to my heart, and that is using the customer to help you make your decisions. Not help you, drive you to make your decisions. And what I'm hearing and what you just said there, Mike, was, yeah, we're gonna respond to the customer, be they St. George, be they Bryan, be they whichever city is next on the list. We are going to make sure that the experience is a delight to that customer, and the only way we can know that is by understanding what that customer's experience is, what that customer wants, desires, and it may be unique. And I certainly appreciate that as a customer experience guy myself. Guys, this has been a delightful conversation, although I am kind of hungry because we have certainly talked about some wonderful food. I loved hearing the influences and how you've come up with that menu, Brian, and how you were able to choose between, even like you said, the coffee cup and everything that goes into creating a brand from a food and beverage perspective. Mike, it's been great to hear how this customer centricity approach, overused word, but it really is something that I'm hearing loud and clear come out from what you're saying and how you're approaching the growth of this brand and the definition of this brand, even from the very beginning of having that value, that mantra, that slogan of unexpected experiences for people. That shows me that it is all about that customer and understanding the customer and being delighted when you're able to delight them. So, Mike, Brian, really had a great time today. Thank you so much for being on the episode. Thank you for being on CX Passport. I look forward to joining you at a venue someday soon. I eagerly await the opportunity to head out there and eat some of that great food and embarrass myself a little bit with my golf game, but I'm sure it'll be fun nonetheless. So thank you all very much for being on CX Passport.
Thank you, Rick.
Thank you for having us.
Thanks for joining us this week on CX Passport. Make sure to visit our website, cxpassport.com, where you can hit subscribe so you'll never miss a show. While you're at it, you can check out the rest of the EX for CX website. If you're looking to get real about customer experience, EX for CX is available to help you increase revenue by starting to listen to your customers and create great experiences for every customer every time. Thanks for listening to CX Passport, and be sure to tune in for our next episode. Until next time, I'm Rick Denton, and I believe the best meals are served outside and require a passport.